going on, guys? Jet fan here. Gotta look at the Nagato. Takagi is my preferred commander for this ship, and then we're going to look at some numbers with Takagi on the Nagato. 18.2 kilometers is your firing range, and AA defense 57, not a great number. Maneuverability 11.6 on the rudder and 12.8 on concealment. Let's briefly talk about Nagato and what my thoughts are on her. Nagato is a challenging ship, in my opinion, but at the same time, I think that Nagato plays better at medium range to longer range. So, if we want to talk about where Nagato, I think, shines and performs the best, it's at the medium range engagement, medium to long range. So, what I classify as a medium range engagement for Nagato would be about 10 kilometers to about 15 kilometers, okay? And you could say even from like 9 to 13 and a half, 14. So if we really wanted to make it a medium range engagement, we'll say from 9 kilometers, right, to about 14 kilometers, I think is where Nagato really makes its money, so to speak, okay? And what I mean by that is outside of that range, yes, the guns can be effective. Inside that range, yes, the guns can be effective. Not saying it can't be in either one of those other circumstances. But for me, the way that Nagato plays and what Nagato does best and what I get the most out of in a Nagato game, right, when I'm running Nagato with Takagi, is in that 9 to 14 range. Now, that being said, I just ripped that scene up for 14K, right? And it just shows that this ship is not a brawler, okay? That I want to get across. It's not a brawler. That doesn't mean that you can't get away with a brawl once in a while in it. Okay? If the situation in the game dictates, hey, you need to get up into a spot and you need to, tangle it up with somebody, so be it. You got to do what you got to do. And if that's the case, then get up in there, you get into the fight, you get the guns going. The problem that I have with Nagato is that the armor does not bode well for a brawling style ship. Okay, it is not like a well armored tank. Okay, it is a lightly armored battleship. Okay, there's a lot of green on this ship. If you go and you look at this ship in the armor view, okay, you're going to see a lot of green. What I mean by that, you're going to see a lot of 25 millimeter armor. Okay, and that's not going to be very good. Okay, when you get up tiered against tier 7s. And even tier 5s, because there's tier 5s that have big guns in this game, okay? Warspite, right? Okay? West Virginia. Yeah. I mean, there's the list can go on, okay? That Arizona's another big threat, okay? Obviously, other Nagatos are threats. So my point is, if you are not conscious about your armor angling and how much meat you're showing, that's what I like to describe as too much angle. You're putting too much meat out there, right? There's too much meat on that bone. You're asking yourself to basically get a large portion of your HP removed by poor armor angling. And Nagato is 100% that ship. Now, there's some downsides to Nagato that I'm not huge on. Why this ship has worse range with the same build than Fuso at tier 5. So Nagato at tier 6 has 18.2 kilometers. Fuso at tier 5 has 18.4. Okay, now obviously Fuso doesn't have access to the concealment mod, which, is borderline a saving grace for this ship. Okay, the concealment that Nagato has relative to other ships at the tier, and even when you're up tiered, makes it a ship that you can go dark, i.e., not be sighted, reposition yourself, realign yourself, put yourself in a good position to counter an enemy's move, right? I.e., get a broadside on somebody, send a salvo, and punish that decision. Okay? The best way to play Nagato, in my opinion, is to know, and I know this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but you have to know the game. You have to be able to play off of feel. You can't say, it's not a ship where I can say, like, for example, the Lenin. Lenin, to me, is a ship that you don't point anything but the bow, and what you do in that ship, excuse me, what you do in that ship is you just keep it bow in, right? Nagato is not some ship where I say, oh, you head straight in this direction for 30 seconds and then you turn out and you do this and you do that and your guns are this and that. No, Nagato is to me 100% a field ship. And what I mean by a field ship is what I've been basically describing here. The only way that you really get the most out of Nagato is by looking at the map, knowing which angle has the best for you to get the most damage, which ship is presenting the biggest broadside. How am I going to influence this game? Am I armored well or angled well enough against this ship? Am I angled well enough against that ship? Which one of these ships that I have to give a poor angle to is the least threatening? All right, that's just, this ship to me is the pinnacle of basically getting you ready for tier 7. And what I mean by that also is that if you can play the Nagato well, and what I classify as well is by helping your team win, and being able to put out at least 75 to 80k in damage, and assist in caps, get some defense ribbons, or maybe a capture assist ribbon. Basically in that upper right corner, get a lot of those boxes filled. Okay, you want to see a nice chest full of medals at the end of your round. Okay, now if you can do that and get that damage number that I was mentioning earlier, then this Nagato is going to prepare you for Amagi at tier 7, because Amagi at tier 7 actually has less HP than this Nagato. Okay, it has much better firing range. It has 18, I think, 0.8 as opposed to 18.2, but it's going to prepare you. So what's good in Nagato is the medium range engagement and the ability to punish. Okay, the Nagato guns can do absolutely devastating damage on a single salvo. Okay, they're a high alpha strike. If you get the dispersion properly and you get the dispersion luck, you can absolutely remove somebody from the game. So here you see I'm turning in, right? And I was able to minimize the damage from CNUP. Arizona put shells at me, okay? So between those two, we lost about 5,000 HP. Not the worst thing in the world. Again, that's a trade that we'll take, especially when you consider that we're about to get rid of this CNUP, okay? And we're at 91,000 damage. Look, if you're kind of paying attention to what I'm doing here in this game, I'm constantly evaluating who's looking at me, who has shots on me. Obviously, we were able to take CNOP down. Okay, what's the most juicy target for me to shoot at out of all these targets remaining? Right. I even looked over to my starboard or my port side, excuse me, and I saw Fiji was there. What ship is the best ship for me to shoot at? What ship is the most threatening for me? Okay, these are all things that Nagato you have to be considering, and the reason why is because it's unforgiving. Okay, this ship does not grant you the luxury of making that mistake. Okay, because if you make that mistake, you're going to be punished with a massive salvo against you, and when that happens, you're going to be in a world of hurt, and you're not going to be able to influence the game nearly as well as you were prior. Overall, if I had to put a number on Nagato from an effective standpoint of 1 to 10, I'd say it's about a 6.5. And I think that a lot of people would give it a much lower score, but I think that I am able to, based on what I perceive the playstyle that is required and how my playstyle can fit in with this ship, I think that you can actually be relatively effective. I'm thinking about doing a new series or a new setup here where I go nation by nation and I rank these ships from tier to tier on most effective. So, for example, if I did the Japanese, I would start at, obviously the tier 3 Japanese tech tree, and I'd work my way all the way up to the tier 7 Japanese tech tree, and I'd rank them from, well, I guess it'd be 1 through 5, right? Because tier 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 is 5. So I'd rank them from numbers 1 through 5 on what ships I like the most. Koenig obviously is about to go down here. He gets knocked out for our second sinking. I'm going to start turning out to the right here. I'm thinking I'll head the Arizona off, cut him off, maybe do some serious damage to him. But anyway, back to my point about the series that I'm thinking about doing here. Where I would rank the strongest ship by its tier per nation. So I think that out of the Japanese line, I'd say, I'm just throwing this out there, I'd say the Congo is the weakest, or Nagato is the weakest, so they'd be number 5. And I go through a match of this, and I talk about strengths, weaknesses, kind of similar to this, and we talk about why they were ranked where they were relative to other ships. And then I get all the way to number 1, and I'd say, okay, I think that the Amagi is the most powerful, the Fuso is the most powerful up the tier, right? And then I'd again go through and I'd explain why I think that is the way it is, and why I have it ranked that way. Now I have to come out with some sort of a ranking system if I'm going to go down that path. Um, so that'll just be on the lookout for that. I'm gonna probably come out with something like that because I think that'd be interesting, and I give you guys some insight into why I rank ships the way I rank them, and how I think about ships, um, with almost a quantifiable style number attached to it. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be coming out. Um, if you are thinking about grinding the Japanese line, obviously the Japanese line has been out for some time. If you are like me and you were late to the party on the Japanese line, and you're considering it, or should you grind a different line, that's up to you. Um, and a good job there by our friendly blue, knocking out the enemy battleship there. Um, so back to my point, if you're thinking about grinding this line, you have to know how to play it. If you're a German battleship player that wants to get up constantly and push and fight and tangle up tight, it's going to be a tougher line for you. You're going to have to go through some growing pains, some adjustments. Okay, the German, and to be fair, the German battleship line was the first line that I actually went through. Okay, now I tried to play multiple lines at the same time, but the German line was my first. The U.S. line was my second. Then I think the British line, and then came this Japanese line. And currently, I am working on the French and Russian line at the same time. So I'm going through both those kind of simultaneously. Not in a huge rush for either one of those ones right now. I don't really like the ships that they have for either one. I'm not really a fan of the small caliber French guns from what I've seen. But I'll probably keep working on that and get some looks for you guys out on that and my thoughts and whatnot. Um, but again, let's bring it back. Let's focus on Nagato and where I think your decision making is going to have to come in if you want to grind this line and obviously grind past this tier 6 to get to the Amagi. This is going to be, in my opinion, your most challenging ship. I've had nothing but a pleasurable experience in the Amagi since I've unlocked it. Okay, this ship, Nagato, not so much. It's very satisfying when you hit a big 20k, 15k salvo, and you think to yourself, man, who says this isn't a good ship? This is a darn good ship. Like this Nagato, man. Medium range, long range, this thing absolutely murks people, right? It hits hard. It performs well, all this stuff. Okay, well, I mean, and then you're going to follow up with a salvo where you're going to be 7.5, 8 kilometers away, and you got a broadside cruiser, and you're going to do 4 over pens. Even when you're aiming perfect waterline, it looks like those shells went in perfect waterline. It's like, okay, well, maybe not so much. So this ship, the best way I can describe it, you're going to take the good, and you got to take the good with the bad. Okay, the armor, very poor. Okay, rudder shift, very good. So use the rudder shift to offset the poor armor, right? Guns, good range, sometimes poor accuracy dispersion. You got to take the good with the bad. All in all, if you like the Japanese Tier 5 Fuso, just be prepared for a little more challenging version of that. The Japanese line is fun, it's rewarding, but it's challenging. Check it out, guys. Hope you liked the video. If you did, leave it a like. We'll see you out on the high seas.